Adolf Hitler, one of history's most vilified figures, stands as a symbol of unchecked power and unparalleled atrocities. His name is synonymous with evil, remembered as the orchestrator of some of the darkest chapters in human history. Yet, it is easy to forget that for over a decade he was celebrated by many, lauded by world leaders, idolized by his people, and revered as a near messianic figure in Germany. How does someone rise from obscurity to such dizzying heights of influence, only to plunge humanity into a nightmare of war and genocide? To understand Hitler's place in history, we must step back and view him alongside other controversial figures, leaders like Genghis Khan, whose conquests left entire civilizations in ruins, Julius Caesar, who ushered in an era of imperial Rome through war and betrayal, and Stalin, whose reign of terror claimed millions of lives. The Crusades, too, show us how ideology can fuel unthinkable violence. Comparing these figures helps us contextualize Hitler's infamy. Was he uniquely monstrous, or does his evil reflect a recurring pattern in history? Only by examining his rise can we attempt to answer this question. To understand how such a figure came to be, we must return to the beginning. Adolf Hitler's early years are shrouded in mystery, with gaps in the historical record and contradictions in personal accounts. Yet, from the surviving evidence, we can piece together a portrait of his formative years, a picture that, while incomplete, offers crucial insights into his psyche and the forces that shaped him. Born on April in the small Austrian town of Braunau am Inn, Hitler's roots were humble. His father, Alois Hitler, a bad-tempered customs official who worked tirelessly but carried a heavy burden of personal contradictions. Born illegitimate as Alois Schicklgruber, his paternity remained uncertain, though he later adopted the surname Hitler after his stepfather, Johann Georg Hiedler. This seemingly minor administrative change would forever alter history. Adolf Schicklgruber may not have had quite the same ring to it. Aloysius' third wife, Clara, was his younger relative, his niece by some accounts, and she adored Adolf, the youngest of their children to survive infancy. Adolf's early home life was turbulent. Aloysius' violent temper frequently turned on his son, while Clara sought to shield and spoil him in equal measure. Tragedy struck the family when Adolf's younger brother, Edmund, died of measles in 1900s. The loss devastated the young Hitler, an early encounter with grief that may have influenced his later worldview. At just 14, Adolf faced another blow, the death of his father from a sudden heart attack. His mother, Clara, died 5 years later from breast cancer. It was said that the Jewish doctor who treated Clara, Dr. Eduard Bloch, showed her immense kindness during her final days. A fact Hitler acknowledged years later when he allowed Bloch to emigrate to the United States despite anti-Semitic policies. The now orphaned Hitler had moved to Vienna, where he faced rejection from the prestigious Academy of Fine Arts, not once, but twice. These failures were pivotal, fueling a deep sense of inadequacy and resentment. Reduced to living in shelters and selling hand-painted postcards to survive, Hitler began to internalize a worldview shaped by Vienna's ethnic tensions. The city's multicultural environment, particularly its large Jewish population, became the foundation of the warped ideology he would later champion. Hitler relocated to Munich, driven in part by a desire to avoid military service in the Austro-Hungarian army. Ironically, World War I would soon ignite his fervent nationalism. Hitler enthusiastically enlisted in the German army, serving in the 16th Bavarian Reserve Infantry Regiment. As a dispatch runner, he displayed courage under fire, earning the Iron Cross first and second class. decorations he would wear proudly for the rest of his life. Yet, the war's end marked a turning point. While recuperating from a gas attack in a military hospital, news of Germany's defeat reached him. To Hitler, this loss was not due to military failure, but treachery from within. A myth that would form the cornerstone of his political rhetoric, the infamous stab in the back, blamed on Jews and communists. Returning to a defeated and fractured Germany, Hitler became an army political agent, tasked with infiltrating and monitoring extremist groups. This role led him to the German Workers' Party, a small right-wing faction. In a short time, Hitler rose to prominence within the group, using his magnetic oratory skills to galvanize support. By 1920, he had left the military to dedicate himself fully to the party, which he rebranded as the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazis. Germany in the 1920s was a nation in chaos. The Treaty of Versailles had imposed crippling economic penalties, fostering widespread resentment. Communist uprisings and right-wing militias battled for control, particularly in Bavaria. Hitler thrived in this volatile environment, attracting a coalition of disgruntled war veterans, disillusioned workers, and ambitious political operatives. By 1921, he had consolidated power within the Nazi Party and established a private militia, the Sturmabteilung Saar, to protect party meetings and intimidate opponents. After the failed beer hall putsch in November 1923, Adolf Hitler emerged from the shadows of political obscurity to become a significant figure in German history. The attempted coup d'état aimed to topple the Weimar Republic, which Hitler and his followers viewed as weak and illegitimate. The dramatic events unfolded when Hitler, during a rally at the Bürgerbräukeller in Munich, declared the establishment of a new national government in Germany. However, the coup quickly failed, leading to a violent confrontation with the police and the arrest of Hitler, who tried to flee to Austria via the Bavarian Alps. Charged with treason, Hitler's trial began in February 1924. This trial would prove pivotal for the future of Hitler and the Nazi Party, providing him with a platform to express his extremist views. And to gain national attention, held in the People's Court in Munich, the proceedings became a spectacle that showcased Hitler's remarkable charisma and oratory skills. He skillfully used the courtroom as a stage to deliver passionate speeches, where he framed his actions during the putsch as a patriotic act. A desperate response to a government he characterized as corrupt and weak, Hitler's performance in court was nothing short of theatrical. Instead of denying the charges against him, he embraced them, depicting himself as a defender of the German people. His eloquence struck a chord with many, turning him into a symbol of national pride for his supporters. This manipulation of public perception transformed his image. From a failed insurrectionist to a dynamic nationalist leader, garnering sympathy and increasing his popularity across Germany. The trial, which lasted several months, concluded in April 1924, with Hitler receiving a relatively lenient sentence of 5 years in Landsberg prison. However, he served only 9 months due to political machinations and public sympathy. During his imprisonment, life in Landsberg was less austere than one might expect from a typical prison. Instead, it resembled a comfortable retreat. Hitler welcomed visitors and enjoyed a relatively lavish lifestyle, gaining weight as he indulged in food and drink. It was in this environment that he decided that he could no longer take power from revolution, but instead needed to take power through success and dismantle from within. He also wrote Mein Kampf, My Struggle, his infamous autobiography and political manifesto. In Mein Kampf, anti-Semitic beliefs and expansive vision for Germany, which included the concept of Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people. Though initially a commercial failure upon its release in 1925, the book later became a critical element of Nazi propaganda, symbolizing Hitler's regime and ultimately making him extremely wealthy. The combination of his high-profile trial, the writing of Mein Kampf, and his ability to rally public sentiment laid the groundwork for Hitler's eventual rise to power. The notoriety he gained transformed him from an obscure figure into a key player on the national stage. As the political climate in Germany shifted due to economic turmoil and societal unrest, Hitler was well positioned to capitalize on the growing discontent, leading to the rise of the Nazi Party and his eventual appointment as Chancellor in 1933. Following Adolf Hitler's release from Landsberg prison in December 1924, he returned to a Germany that was beginning to recover from the economic turmoil of the early 1920s. The high inflation and political instability that had plagued the country were largely alleviated by the Dawes Plan, which restructured Germany's reparations payments and stabilized its economy to rebuild his influence. Shortly after his release, Hitler relocated to Berchtesgaden, a picturesque town in Bavaria that would become a significant place in his life. He settled in a modest chalet known as Haus Wachenfeld, captivated by the serene alpine surroundings and breathtaking natural beauty. The region deeply resonated with him, and he would return often throughout his life, making it a symbol of his aspirations. In Berchtesgaden, Hitler focused on revitalizing the Nazi Party and sharpening its political agenda. He was inspired by the tranquil landscapes, frequently taking long walks to reflect and gather his thoughts. These walks not only provided him with clarity, but also served as a backdrop for the fiery rhetoric he would later deliver in his speeches. Integral to his new life in Berchtesgaden was his half-sister, Angela Raubal, who played a crucial role in his domestic affairs. Angela served as his housekeeper, providing stability and familiarity during this tumultuous time. Her daughter, Geli Raubal, became increasingly central to Hitler's life. Geli, vibrant and energetic at around 19 years old, intrigued Hitler, drawing him into a complex and often obsessive relationship. Hitler's and Geli's relationship were marked by an intriguing mix of fascination and possessiveness. Hitler was drawn to her youthful charm, and as their relationship deepened, he became increasingly protective and controlling. This possessiveness created tension not only between them, but also within the household, as Angela observed the strain in their interactions. She often attempted to mediate the situation, striving to maintain harmony amidst the emotional complexities that unfolded within their lives. While in Berchtesgaden, Hitler took the opportunity to refine his strategies for the Nazi Party. After an initial ban on public appearances following the failed beer hall putsch, he redirected his energies into organizing and writing. When the Bavarian government eventually lifted the ban, Hitler seized the chance to re-enter the political arena. He made a series of carefully calculated appearances across Germany, delivering impassioned speeches that resonated with a populace hungry for change. His charisma and persuasive oratory captivated audiences, allowing him to recast himself and the Nazi Party as champions of national renewal, a return to the greatness that many Germans felt had been stripped away. This period in Berchtesgaden was critical in laying the groundwork for the Nazi regime's dramatic rise to power. While Hitler cultivated his political ambitions, the serene beauty of the Bavarian Alps contrasted sharply with the dark path he would soon embark upon. Hitler, recognizing the need for a more disciplined and calculated approach, set about restructuring the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP. The party shifted from its violent revolutionary tactics to focus on gaining power through legitimate political channels. Hitler's charisma and propaganda skills played a key role in reviving the Nazi movement, even as Germany's economy began a brief period of recovery. In 1926, Hitler solidified his leadership by quashing dissent within the NSDAP, most notably from Gregor Strasser. Strasser, a charismatic leader with a socialist-leaning agenda, had built a strong following in northern Germany. Hitler's vision clashed with Strasser's, but rather than alienating him entirely, Hitler leveraged Strasser's organizational skills while ensuring his own supremacy. During this period, Hitler first met Joseph Goebbels, a gifted orator and propagandist initially aligned with Strasser. Hitler's ability to charm and manipulate was on full display as he won over Goebbels, who became one of his most loyal and effective allies. Goebbels soon took charge of Nazi propaganda, crafting the powerful narratives and spectacles that would become a hallmark of the party. This marked the beginning of a symbiotic relationship where Hitler's ideas and Goebbels' propaganda machine worked in tandem to mesmerize the German public. In the 1928 Reichstag elections, the NSDAP won a mere 3% of the vote, a humbling result that underscored its marginal status. The party's limited appeal at this stage reflected the relative stability of the Weimar Republic during a period of economic recovery. However, the Nazi Party's fortunes changed with the onset of the Great Depression in 1929. Germany, heavily reliant on American loans under the Dawes Plan, was devastated when the Wall Street crash sent shockwaves through the global economy. Unemployment soared, and public discontent with the Weimar Republic's inability to address the crisis created fertile ground for extremist ideologies. By 1930, the Nazis had capitalized on economic despair and nationalist resentment, securing 18.3% of the vote and becoming the second largest party in the Reichstag. Hitler's fiery speeches and promises to restore Germany's greatness resonated with a populace desperate for hope. The Nazi propaganda machine, led by Goebbels, used modern techniques like radio broadcasts, mass rallies, and visually striking posters to amplify Hitler's message. The party's blend of nationalism, anti-Semitism, and anti-communism struck a chord with many Germans who felt abandoned by the traditional political elite. In 1932, Hitler ran for the office of president against the incumbent president Paul von Hindenburg. Though he lost both rounds of the election, the campaign significantly elevated Hitler's profile. Portrayed as the dynamic leader Germany needed, Hitler's relentless campaigning and propaganda blitz showcased his uncanny ability to mobilize support. Hitler and Goebbels ran a modern campaign, crisscrossing Germany, sometimes flying to hold multiple rallies on the same day to reach as many voters as possible. Meanwhile, Hindenburg, a venerable World War I hero, was seen as a relic of the past. Despite losing to Hindenburg, who was re-elected with 53% of the vote, Hitler emerged as a force to be reckoned with. By this point, the Nazi Party had become the largest in the Reichstag, winning 37% of the vote in the July 1932 elections. Hitler demanded the chancellorship, but was initially rebuffed by Hindenburg, who viewed him as a vulgar demagogue. Germany's political landscape was chaotic, with no party able to form a stable government. Conservative elites, desperate to curb the rise of communism and restore order, believed they could control Hitler by bringing him into the government. The NSDAP continued to exploit public dissatisfaction, positioning themselves as the only viable alternative to a fractured and ineffective government. Hitler's speeches increasingly targeted specific grievances, ranging from economic hardship to fears of communism, uniting a wide spectrum of supporters under the Nazi banner. The Nazis also gained financial backing from influential industrialists who saw Hitler as a bulwark against socialism and communism. In January 1933, after backroom deals and intense political maneuvering, Hindenburg reluctantly appointed Hitler as Chancellor. Conservative politicians like Franz von Papen, who orchestrated the arrangement, underestimated Hitler's cunning and ambition, believing they could use him as a puppet. Von Papen famously boasted that they would be able to box Hitler in and control him. Once in office, Hitler wasted no time consolidating his grip on power. The Reichstag fire in February 1933 provided a pretext for the Reichstag fire decree, which suspended civil liberties and allowed for the arrest of political opponents. The Nazis claimed the fire was part of a communist plot, further stoking fears and justifying their repressive measures. Hitler skillfully used the crisis to portray himself as Germany's savior against chaos and subversion. In March 1933, Hitler pushed through the Enabling Act, which effectively gave him dictatorial powers by allowing him to enact laws without Reichstag approval. The passage of the act was facilitated by Nazi intimidation tactics and the absence of many communist deputies who had been arrested or barred from attending. With the Enabling Act in place, Hitler systematically dismantled Germany's democratic institutions and outlawed opposition parties. By the end of 1933, Germany was a one-party state. Opposition had been crushed, and Hitler's vision of a totalitarian regime was well underway. The transformation from a fringe agitator to the leader of a nation was complete, setting the stage for the catastrophic events that would follow.